China was simply giving the U.S. a balloon, much like one would give a child to make them feel better. Look at this tweet from a Chinese official. That's how they're reacting after we shoot down the suspected surveillance balloon, after it passed 4,000 miles and 8 days over U.S. airspace. Fred Fleitz is the former chief of staff to the National Security Council in the Trump administration. Fred, what you got on this?
Well, look, this was a test. This was a test of our air defenses. This was a test of presidential leadership. And President Biden failed. We now know that the Biden administration knew about this balloon, but the public only found out because a reporter in Montana leaked news of it. And the Biden administration allowed this balloon to go across the entire continental United States, collecting information for China, flying over sensitive U.S. military sites. Then they shot it down after it was done collecting. It's just bizarre, and I just think it shows not just a lack of leadership, but how this administration really underestimates the threat from China.
You know, that's a very good point. I think that most experts, when you look at those in the intelligence community, those military backgrounds, they will unanimously say that the #1 threat to the United States is China when you're looking at the big picture. Yes, you have Russia right now in Ukraine, potential nukes. So things are right on our forefront. But overall, when you're looking at the big picture, China has a tremendous influence over Russia. They deal with Iran. They deal with North Korea. They're definitely a problem. But now that this has happened, how do you think, Fred, this is going to further strain relations between our two countries? Because the reality is they may be our enemy, but we still have to have some diplomatic relationship.
This administration thinks China is a competitor. If you read the national security strategy, all the statements by the Biden administration, look, France is a competitor. Mexico is a competitor. China is an adversary, maybe an enemy. I try to use the word adversary. Maybe there's not a difference. And I don't think this administration is going to get it. I think a few weeks will go by, and they will try to put this Blinken trip to China back on track. All will be fine. The only difference here is that we have this great special House committee on the threat from China. It had strong bipartisan support. It's going to generate headlines. It's going to make it much harder for the Biden administration to ignore and downplay this incident.
Yes, and send Eric Swalwell over there. I heard he had great Chinese relations. The thing that I get here, though, is like this thing flew over Alaska, then it went over Canada. Canada did absolutely nothing about it because that's what Canada does. And I think they actually apologized to China for it accidentally crossing into their airspace.
Carl, stop sugarcoating it. Tell us how you feel about Canada.
Okay, so, but my bigger thing here, Fred, is Joe Biden came out and he said, I told them to shoot this down on Wednesday. Why was it not down on Wednesday?
We don't know that Biden actually did that. Biden says a lot of things that turn out not to be true. My guess is that the Biden administration didn't take action immediately because they didn't want to upset the Chinese. They desperately wanted Blinken to go to China. Once it was over, the middle of the United States, they were reluctant to shoot it down because they probably thought it would fall on Americans down below. But it could have been shot down over Alaska or Montana with very little risk of
or the Pacific
hurting anyone on the ground.
Or the Pacific before it got here.
Before it even hit land.
Right.
I mean, that's really, I thought we had protocols. Fred, let me ask you a question. Carl and I spoke about this too. We have protocols in place to protect our airspace. Our military is extremely competent. I dare say we are the most lethal force in the world, the best military ever known to man. I say that with 100% of my being. There's no question about this. Why did we even let this get over our land? That's number one. Number two, as an American, I think people have to take a step back and really question our leadership. What is going on in this White House? What do you think, Fred? Should it have ever hit land, and should we have confidence in our government?
No, it shouldn't have. I mean, I wouldn't have let it get any further than Alaska. I'm sure the White House was warned about this. They decided to ignore it because they didn't want to upset this effort to go to China. And what was the purpose of Blinken's trip? The main purpose was to talk about climate change, not Taiwan, not human rights, not Russia. That's the priority of this administration. So when we have an unserious foreign policy and a president who will not act to defend our territory, I think we're really in trouble.
Yeah, I think you're right. Fred Fleitz, always a pleasure, sir. Appreciate the insight.